going to be reading chapter 15, The Hunter, and just remember, it's a story. It was Christmas Eve and William was getting ready for bed unusually early, as all children should on Christmas Eve. But not before placing a mince pie for the reindeer and a carrot for Santa on the wonky little wooden table by the chimney. I bet you thought Santa eats the mince pies and reindeer eat the carrots, but that's the most common Christmas Eve mistake, as Mr. Trundle would knowingly say each year. Mr. Trundle tucked William into bed, and although he desperately wanted to stay awake for as long as possible, he was so worn out with Christmas excitement he fell fast asleep within 0.8 seconds of his head touching his pillow. William managed to stay awake a little longer, but eventually they were both fast asleep. As William lay snoozing, dreaming Christmassy dreams in his head, he was completely unaware that those tiny little hairs on his arms and his neck were all standing on end again. They were standing on end again because William was still being watched. Outside it had been snowing heavily all day. All the rooftops in William Street were thickly coated in white freezing fluff that was as smooth as the icing on a Christmas cake. All except one rooftop, whose perfectly fallen snow had been disturbed by something. 2 sets of footprints were scattered around the roof, drawing large circles in the snow. Someone was there, and judging by the hundreds of steps, they must have been pacing back and forth for quite some time. The owners of these footprints were a man and his dog, but they weren't pacing any more. They were as still as statues, hiding behind the chimney. But what was a man and a dog doing on the rooftop opposite William's house on Christmas Eve? Why had they been spying on William for the past few weeks? And why were they now sitting out of sight in the freezing snow? Who were they? Well, I will tell you. This man was evil. This man was the Hunter. The Hunter was an old man with creased, leathery skin on his face and a large, lumpy white scar that ran from his eye down to his chin. He wore a very odd-looking hunting hat, with a long peacock feather sticking proudly out of it. The poor peacock's head was now the handle of an umbrella, and he was always smoking a crooked pipe made of ivory, even in his sleep. Its sickly bitter smoke hung in the air for hours, and if you were standing next to him, the smoke would sting your nostrils most unpleasantly. The most obvious thing about him, though, was just how incredibly posh he was. He looked posh, smelt posh, walked and talked posh. Even the way he was crouched behind the chimney was posh. In fact, he was so posh that his socks were made of pure gold thread, and he only blew his nose on real £10 notes. The Hunter was the eldest son of a very wealthy man, and when his father died, the Hunter inherited piles and piles of family gold. He kept it all to himself in a huge vault inside the family mansion and refused to let anyone else inside. He shut himself away from his family, from the world. Even the annual Christmas cards from distant relatives couldn't drag him away from counting his wealth. He loved money. He loved gold. But most of all, he loved hunting. He started hunting poor innocent animals when he was a little boy. Whilst his filthy rich parents were away on long exotic holidays, he would be left at home with his nanny, who was too busy looking after his perfect baby brother to pay him any attention. First he hunted the neighbour's cat with a trap made of leftover chopsticks. He enjoyed it so much that the next day he set his pet hamster free in the garden hedge maze, then hunted it down with a slingshot made from the neighbour's cat's bones. Then he released his goldfish into the moat and hunted it using a snooker cue from the billiard room as a spear. Back then, when he was little, the hunter was known as Huxley, but one long winter holiday at home from boarding school, he managed to track and hunt every single animal in a 12-mile radius of the family mansion. From then on, he became only known as the Hunter. Huxley was no more. Over the years, the animals he liked to hunt had become more and more exotic, and the more rare the animal, the more he wanted to kill it. He hunted lions and tigers, bears and monkeys, zebras and giraffes, but they weren't anywhere near rare enough for the hunter anymore. He liked to hunt the really ridiculously rare animals, creatures so rare that most people have never heard of them, but they are all very real. He had the horn of a unicorn, which he'd hunted in the glaciers of Greenland. He had the paw of a pink polar bear he'd shot with a crossbow at the foot of a rainbow. He had the ears of a kangaroo, the gills of a horse shark, the tail of a snail whale, the tongue of a fanglebeast, the snout of a pigfish, and the wings of 20,000 flying ants he'd swatted in Sweden on Flying Ant Day. He hunted creatures of all sorts, and once he'd shot them, he had their heads mounted on the walls of his great mansion. Wherever the hunter went, his loyal dog, Growler, followed. Growler had been the hunter's trusty companion for many, many years. He did anything the hunter told him to, because if he didn't, he knew he would end up as a head on the mansion wall. But why were the hunter and Growler hiding on a rooftop in the snow on Christmas Eve? And why had they been secretly spying on William for the past few weeks? Well, I was just about to tell you before you interrupted me. You see, one Christmas Eve, a very long time ago, when the hunter was still called Huxley, he had seen the most fantastic sight any boy could ever see. He had seen a flying reindeer. His younger brother had heard something in the sky over the mansion. Someone was singing. Then all of a sudden a gigantic sleigh had burst through a break in the snow clouds. The little boy called for his brother, and that's when Huxley had seen them. 9 magnificently magical flying reindeer. Flying reindeer! Flying reindeer! Oh, by golly gosh, Huxley said. Flying reindeer, I don't believe my eyes. Oh, they have to be the rarest creatures in the world, exclaimed Huxley's little brother. And they were. Oh, I must have one, Huxley had cried. From that night on, the hunter's life had changed. All he thought about, all he wanted, was the head of a magnificently magical flying reindeer hanging on his wall above his fireplace. It was all he dreamt about. Ever since that night, he had focused all his hunting efforts on tracking Santa down to get a clear shot of one of those rare creatures. And a few weeks ago, he had seen something that gave him a wickedly evil idea. A young, sad boy sitting in a wheelchair with his ridiculously festively dressed father. It was William. Look at this boy here, Growler, that useless lump of sadness in that wheelchair, said the hunter to his dog. A young, sad boy in a wheelchair. Oh, tut, tut, how very pathetic, he continued with a cunning smile growing on his face. The hunter had an idea. Oh, by golly gosh, Growler, I do believe I know how to find those flying reindeer, he cried with an evil twinkle in his posh black eyes. We've been trying to find them for all these years, and we've been doing it all wrong, my furry friend. He thumped his dog on the back with horrid excitement. We need to let Santa bring those fantastic flying beasties to us. Don't you see, you stupid mutt? How could Santa possibly not pay this poor, pathetic boy a visit this Christmas? Of course he will. You idiotic little flea bag. Don't you understand? We'll follow this boy, set up camp on the roof, and wait until Christmas Eve. Santa will swoop down from the sky on that garish sleigh of his, and when he slides down this boy's chimney, those magical deer of his will be left all alone, in plain sight. That's when I'll do it. I'll shoot them, Growler. I'll shoot them all. The hunter let out a cackle as he rubbed his greedy hands together with delight at the thought of shooting Santa's flying reindeer. We'll finally have them, the heads of the rarest creatures on the planet, hanging on our glorious wall above the fireplace. He let out an almighty maniacal laugh. Growler just huffed out a sigh of relief, thankful that he was a dog and not a flying reindeer. So the hunter and his dog followed William to his home, staying hidden in the shadows. They watched his every movement. They saw him get creamed at the supermarket. They were waiting inside the postbox, and now they were sitting on the rooftop opposite William's wonky little house, waiting for Santa's sleigh to appear, for tonight was Christmas Eve. Tonight the hunter would shoot the magnificently magical flying reindeer. And remember, it's just a story. I'll see you guys next time.